What do I want tissue? Okay. What time are we doing this? All right, hi, I'm Jeanie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jeanie.
And thank you for sharing that, Scott. I actually didn't know most of that. This goes to show how little I pay attention. And how you can know people for years but not really know them well. And yeah, a lot of similarities between my story and Scott's. Both started drinking young. Similar family situation. My dad and everyone on his side of the family's alcoholics. My mom, all teetotalers. To jump in, religious teetotaling. But that alcoholic mindset is pretty prevalent. Can't swing a cat around without hitting one. And I think I may have also passed those genes on to my son. But I had my first drink when I was 6, and I was the only house in the neighborhood that had no alcohol in it. My dad was sober in AA by that time. My mom was a teetotaler. I grew up in what I like to call the slums of Lake Forest Park, which is white bread suburbia north of Seattle. And, we weren't dirt poor, we weren't rich, but we had all of our needs met. We had issues. There was a lot of violence growing up, but not from my parents. I had siblings where we had a lot of violence on an almost daily basis. And I remember many, many years later coming back to the house we grew up in as my dad was selling it. And he didn't want to put in the money to fix all the shit we had wrecked to sell the house at a high. He just wanted to be done with it. I couldn't understand why. Now, there were literally butcher knife marks in the doors, or those nice hollow doors. We're not talking solid wood, but and of course holes in the doors where they'd been kicked, trying to kick it in and get to the other one and kill them. And it was just insanity, and I was a part of that. And like I said, there was no alcohol in my house growing up. Nobody around me drank except for friends. And the day I took my first drink, I was in the car the day off of school for some reason, and my dad had his brother in town, who he was sure was an alcoholic, and he was, and he died at 56. But he wasn't an alcoholic. And ironically, that day, my dad ended up with me, and he was taking his brother to an AA meeting, and wanted to try and introduce him, give him a little nudge. And on the way there, we stopped at a convenience store, and my uncle went in, and he came back out, and he had a paper bag. And I'm curious, what's in the paper bag? And I'm thinking, candy, what you got in there? So I'm pestering my uncle in the back seat, what you got, what you got? And finally, he opens up the bag, and I look at it, and he goes, and it's a bottle of Southern Comfort and a carton of cigarettes. And, so I'm about to, tattle on him, and he said, "I'll give you a drink." Shut up. And I said, "Okay." And I had my first drink of alcohol that day in the back seat of the station wagon with my dad and his brother on the way to an AA meeting. And I coughed and choked and almost gagged, but I was determined to keep that down and keep the secret because I wanted more. And after I got done with the choking and gasping, that warm feeling hit me, and a little glow kind of comes over you, and I just didn't recall ever really feeling that good up to that point. And it made me feel the way that I wanted to feel more. And so after that, I was aware there was this thing that I wanted more of, and it was easy to find. Go to the friend's house across the street, next door, whatever. Their parents always had a liquor cabinet, or beer, or alcohol somewhere. And then later on, I learned about medicine cabinets and snooping in my friends' parents' medicine cabinets and just taking shit randomly. Um, and I'm lucky I'm alive. um, so I was driven to feel differently I didn't want to be who I was. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Um, I want to be somebody else, and I liked that feeling that alcohol gave me. I was about 9. I started. I first tried cigarettes, and then started smoking pot, and learned all the neat tricks about from shoplifting liquor to getting others to buy it for you. Then I learned about shoplifting diet pills that looked like speed, and I would sell them to my suburban friends, tell them it was speed, and get money for more booze or weed or whatever. And so I had a little thing going. And by the time I was 11, I had started running away from home, first a weekend here and a weekend there. And you can't tell me what to do, and showing them by running away. And God, I look back now, like 11. I look at somebody who's 25 as a kid now, and so I'm thinking back, it's just a very strange story, but it's mine. And um, at some point, I was so angry with my parents that I did the ultimate betrayal, and that was I left the house and I walked down to the shopping center, went to the phone booth back when we had those, and I called CPS, Child Protective Services, and I told them my parents were abusing me and I needed somebody to come get me. And somebody did. They came and got me, and they took me to the DSH office downtown Seattle. And I was processed or something. Wasn't really interviewed, but processed, and I'm sure an investigation was started. And I was there until the wee hours of the morning, and finally a taxi showed up and took me way the hell out in the middle of nowhere to my new temporary home. They called them receiving homes. They're like temporary foster homes. And at first, I played the naive kid, and but what I found after a few trips to different temporary foster homes was that most of the girls that were there had been there a while or had been in many, many foster homes, had been through a whole lot of life I had never seen. I grew up in the suburbs. Yes, there was violence between my siblings and I, and it was not a healthy place. But I'd never been on the streets, and but I met girls that had been, and they knew the tricks, and they knew how to get what you want. They knew how to get freedom because even though it's technically not a lockup, everything is locked, including the doors. So I learned to play good girl and do chores and earn points. And then me and whoever my new best friend would earn time to go out and play, and we would take off and then just stick the thumb out and hitch a ride. And from there, I learned. I met all kinds of new friends. And at some point, I was told to meet somebody at this little shop. And it's, you take this bus down here to Third and Pike, and then you walk 2 blocks to First, and there's this little donut shop there. And this little donut shop on First and Pike was my second home for a while. And, I was 12 when I started hanging out there. And I thought I was a real badass. And again, in hindsight, I wonder how I lived through some of my experiences being as young and completely naive as I was. But that's not for me to speculate on. I'm just grateful that I did. So I did a lot of that, bouncing in and out of these receiving homes, foster homes, and then eventually just quit that whole thing and, learn to sleep on whether it was somebody's couch or out on their porch or under their porch. I found my favorite places to sleep were the parking garages of downtown Seattle, because if it was off season by the Seattle Center, there was a parking garage that was empty most of the time. And if I got up to the second to the last, second to the top floor, I'd be covered in case it rained, but people aren't usually driving up all the way to the top, so I would be undisturbed and I would try and get some rest that way. And I learned what cold really is. And that time I was anorexic. I was 5'8" and 105 pounds, which is not much for a Norwegian broad. I'm not built for 105 pounds. So I learned all these tricks, from other people that had been doing it a lot longer than I had. And, I fancied myself some kind of badass. And these were, girls and other people that had been through, serious trauma, abuse. Their parents were addicts, alcoholics. They had been, beaten, abused, neglected, not had food to eat, et cetera, et cetera. And I played that game because I was selfish and I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to drink. I wanted to do drugs. And I didn't really give a shit who I hurt. And I included my parents. While my parents, of course, weren't perfect, they were not abusers. And so there's no alcohol, no drugs going on in my house. Um, excuse me. And they're good people. And they cared genuinely and deeply about me. And, it wasn't until I was many years sober later that I, learned the extent of the damage that had on them. And, excuse me. And it wasn't until I got to a place where I really started feeling, um, after being sober a while and learning about feelings and how to have them and sit with them and not run away from them, which is sometimes still a struggle, but um, mostly it's not these days. There are some days I wish, I didn't have to feel things that were painful, but this is a gift. I consider it a gift today. So when I first came to my first AA meeting, it was in July of 1981, and I had been arrested as a juvenile, but not sent to juvie. They called my dad to come pick me up at 3 in the morning, and I tried to run away. The locked door got buzzed open for somebody else coming in, and I bolted out. And I'm, 13. I'm thinking, this old man will never catch me. Well, I forgot A, was sober, B, quit smoking years ago, and C, he ran 5 miles a day. So I didn't get far on foot. And he caught up with me, and I just gave up. I was just tired. I was tired. I was tired of being cold and wet and hungry and not knowing where I'm going to sleep, not knowing who I can trust, um, not knowing which way is up. I had a lot of traumatic experiences, of being on the street, even for a short time, and and I saw people that came from truly, truly awful situations that had no other choice. Again, that's another thing that I didn't really see until I was sober a few years and had started working the steps. But that first AA meeting, my dad brought me to, and it was the day of an AA picnic in downtown Edmonds. As a child growing up with a parent in AA, we used to go to these summer picnics, AA picnics, and um, I was a kid playing games, finding the needle in the haystack, finding the quarter in the haystack, playing three-legged race. And later, as I got older, I would find people that maybe still smoked pot, wanted to smoke a little with me. And so here I was at my first AA meeting, AA function picnic, where I didn't find anyone that wanted to go smoke a little weed with me. And afterwards, my dad said, "We're going to make a little pit stop." And we stopped at this place in downtown Edmonds. It was called the Elm Club, ELM Club. And it was a Saturday, and it was an 8 o'clock meeting, and it was just packed full of people. Most of them really old, like 30 and over. And we both sat down, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And then he got up and left. And I just sat there kind of petrified and listened. And that was my first AA meeting. And something happened to that first AA meeting that changed my life. And that was, I listened to people that were completely opposite of my life, my style, my everything. I listened to a woman who will always remain, stuck in my mind and heart, tell her story. And she was probably in her late 30s, early 40s. She was mother, probably had kids older than me. And when she talked about what had happened to her uh, as a result of being an alcoholic and talked about the trust that nobody trusted her. Her kids didn't trust her, her parents, her family, her husband. Nobody trusted her because she had broken their trust every time, and she had let them down and talked about not feeling like she ever fit in anywhere. And I could really relate to that. I never felt like, I thought it was because I had a funny last name, 10 letters long Norwegian last name, and I was taller than the other kids at school. And, my family didn't fit in with the neighborhood or whatever it was. Um, I just never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I think that's a pretty common thing with alcoholics. So that first meeting was the first time I ever felt like I identified with another human being human, that didn't have anything to offer me. She wasn't giving me anything, selling me anything. She wasn't somebody sitting behind a desk with a degree telling me what my problem was and what I was going to do about it, or how many community service hours I was going to do about it. Nobody was telling me to do anything. She just shared her story. And I related to that. And that had never happened in my life before. I didn't know it was a thing. And at the very end of the meeting, the guy chairing the meeting looked at me and pointed at me and asked me if I'd like to speak. And I didn't want to speak. I didn't know I had the option of passing. And right as he called on me to speak, my dad came back in the room and sat down next to me. And I said, "My name is Jeanie." And I looked at my dad sheepishly and I said, "I think I'm an alcoholic." And he looked at me like, "I know." "Yeah, you are." There was no question. I thought I was going to be confessing something really shocking to my dad, who brought me to an AA meeting. Surprise, I'm an alcoholic. um, so that was my first AA meeting. And the second thing that happened at that meeting was afterwards. First of all, there were maybe two other people in there that were under 30. So young people in AA wasn't really a thing in 1981, at least not around Seattle. You know, Occasionally us kids of AA members, would get dragged to a few meetings here and there, but, nothing really sticking. So it was just sort of starting that AA as a whole was accepting that, yeah, young people are alcoholics too. And after that meeting, a gal came up to me who was 14 years old, and she stuck her hand out and shook mine and said, "I'm Tracy, and I want to give you my phone number, and I've been sober for 3 weeks, and I'm on my way into treatment. I'm going to a treatment center in Eastern Washington, but I wanted to write you letters." And I said, "You've been sober 3 weeks? What the hell do you need treatment for?" I didn't know somebody could not drink for 3 weeks for any reason, just because they didn't want to. I mean, it just didn't even make sense to me. So that was my first friend in AA, and that was my first contact. Just she had been sober 3 weeks. She wasn't sober 30 years. She wasn't anybody. She wasn't popular. She wasn't an AA guru. She didn't have much time sober, but she had 3 weeks, and she offered it to me. She put her hand out and said, "Welcome. Here's my phone number. Can we write letters?" And we did. And I came to meeting number 2, which was Lake City Young People's, which I don't know if it even exists anymore, and that was back when young people went to it. And back then, young people was also, 30. And then my third meeting was at a place called Fremont, down in the old Fremont district. And that had a special air to it. And I definitely felt comfortable there, like, this is my place. So I had tried to live back at home for a short time after getting sober and deciding that I wasn't the only person that was nuts and needed help, and I left again. Just because you get sober doesn't mean you automatically get sane and start doing the right thing. That didn't come till later, and so I left home again, still sober, and packed my little Safeway sack full of everything I owned. Some pants, socks, and a curling iron, and these are the important things. And I slept on people's couches. I slept at Fremont Hall. I would sleep in the women's bathroom because you could lock the door, but there was carpet in there that was kind of nasty. And I found when I woke up that I had friends and I was itching a lot. And so let me tell you, my first year of sobriety wasn't exactly some sort of picture perfect. It was not an amazing grace story like once I was lost, now I'm found, and everything. I found AA and everything's perfect, not remotely. And I am definitely not an AA salesman. I learned one thing really important from my dad, and it took me a long time to really get the message, and that is that the truth is good enough. And you know, since that first meeting and my years couch surfing and all of the shit, all of the terrible choices I've made, but not drank and not used drugs, I was enabled a chance to take another step forward and another step forward. There were no huge leaps in being sober. I literally went through being a teenager. Astrid mentioned knowing me at Fremont way back when I was just a child. I definitely would not have thought of myself as a child. I would now. And I remember I had these size 10 feet and I had these cowboy boots. And I was always stomping around on the wood floors of Fremont because I was always pissed at someone or something. I was just pissed. It didn't matter, just pissed at the world. And I'll never forget one day when I stomped into the women's room and was trying to, I don't know, fluff my hair or something. And another woman came in and said, "Hey, what's your fucking problem? Why are you stomping around here like the goddamn, troll? There are other people in here trying to have an AA meeting and you're stomping around here like a 2-year-old." And I don't think anyone outside of my family had ever talked to me that way. And I was flabbergasted. And I thought I was going to hit her. And the funniest thing happened. I broke down in tears. And I ended up having a conversation with her. And that was the first woman that I really sort of made a connection with, other than the gal I met at the first meeting, and began to slowly get honest with people. And it was my introduction to the fact that there are other people in the world besides me. And while that might not seem like a big deal to some, it was a huge awakening for me, and it did not come all at once. And I'm at the point now where, I've been sober much longer than I ever drank. I've been sober longer than I was alive when I got sober. And my life has been about, the AA way, the things that the AA steps have taught me, what the traditions have taught me, what the fellowship has taught me, what my experience have taught me, excuse me, and what other people have taught me. And, I've been, I've been married and divorced 3 times. I have a son who's now 35, and he is, I don't think I have to speculate anymore. We'll just say he's probably an alcoholic. And besides the daily drinking and all the people that are hurt every day, it's just the way that the mind thinks. And it's very familiar to me. And it's heartbreaking to watch somebody that you don't have much power, if any, to help. You cannot make someone else get help. You cannot even, you could try and drag someone to an AA meeting, but I wouldn't advise it. They have to come to it, on their own. My responsibility is to stay sober and continue being a mom that stays sober and lives like a sober person and doesn't do things to hurt other people and tries to be somebody that contributes not only to my own life, but maybe to someone else's, in whatever small or big way that I can. And my job is just to continue being that person that tells the truth about myself, to him, to others. And those are things that are a lot harder than I ever expected them to be. And I have also, married and divorced sometimes. I went to school. It took me 10 years to basically get a 2-year degree. But I got 2 2-year degrees at the same time. So that's almost like a 4-year degree. And I have had a few different careers. Um, I have, had different passions that I have delved into at different points in my life. But the one constant is Alcoholics Anonymous, and nothing happens without me being sober and me trying to practice the principles that, others have tried to teach me year after year after year. And there is no, Cinderella story. There is no, like I said, amazing grace. Once I was lost, now I was found. I'm not the Tupperware salesman. I don't have anything to sell. What I have is life. I've been given the gift to go through life, and sometimes it's been just fantastic, and sometimes it's been really painful. I've had a lot of health issues, a lot of physical pain over the last 18 years. That's another ball game that I've needed a lot of help navigating. And I have been blessed to have some really incredible people in my life. One was my sponsor, Harriet, who was sober like, I don't know, 1.5 years when she passed away a couple years ago. And she was fantastic. She was my sponsor and my confidant and a friend, and she helped me navigate some of the toughest waters, medical issues, chronic pain, pain medication, trying different things, speaking to other people that also had the same issues, physical pain, and using the 12 steps to try and deal with those things. None of those things are easy, and there's not really any good blueprints, especially if you're a sober member of AA. And that can be dicey territory, and self pity can slip in pretty easily too. So those are things that I'm constantly needing to work on, and um, but those things, like I said, are a gift. I get to go through those things. I get to feel those things. Um, this last week has been particularly rough family wise. Some things happened that were really hurtful, and I responded by being hurtful back. And that was a terrible, terrible choice. And, today I had to, um, tuck my tail in and sincerely, apologize because I broke someone else's trust. I did something I should have done, and it doesn't matter what they did to me. I know better. I'm supposed to be the adult. But, things like that where, yesterday, fuck no, I'm not apologizing. I had every right to do this, this, and this. Well, Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me that A, never say never, and B, it always comes back to me. Whatever's going on in my life, doesn't matter who it's with or what's happening around me, it's always coming back to inside of me. These steps have given me the power, the patience, I guess, to deal with things as they come. And you wouldn't have heard me say this 20 years ago, but now I think one of the biggest gifts that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, besides the fact that I'm sober and not terrorizing everyone else's life anymore, is the ability to just be there, to feel my feelings and to be there for others that have to feel their feelings too. And, it's 20 years ago or so, I probably would have thought that was, woo, woo woo, some kind of self love BS talk. But you know what? That's one of the most important things that I've learned in AA. Because I'm sober, I can be there and just sit with other people that are hurting. I don't have the answers for other people. I often don't have the answers for myself, but I can do what other people did for me, and we just keep that going. That's what we do in AA. We're not keeping score. Well, I did this for you. You need to do that for me. Oh, I owe you a favor. You owe me two favors. At least it's not supposed to be that way. And it's this, spirit of giving and the fellowship, and the fact that the responsibility always comes back to me is what keeps me sober and sane. So no matter what anyone else does to me or what happens to me, my happiness and my sobriety lie in my hands and my willingness to do what it takes. Um, so yeah, not a Cinderella story, but it's mine. And looking around at the room here, I see a few people that I've known for many many years, decades even, and I'm now at that age where, like, I'm that old. I can say I've been friends with people for 40 years now, 40 plus years, sober 42 years. And a lot of times people will say, "You've been sober what?" I go, "Oh no, I can't believe it either." I can't believe it either, but it happened, just snuck right by me. Um, but this is my life that I love. This is the life that I have, no matter what happens. And other people in AA gave me this gift, and they still do it. Just because you've been sober a while doesn't mean that stuff stops, or your responsibility to be there for other people stops, or to take responsibility for your own stupid mistakes. So I'm just really glad I had a chance to be here tonight and see everyone again. And welcome to anyone that is newish. Whether you're here for the first time or the 41st time, it doesn't matter. I hope that you did hear something tonight or feel something that makes you want to come back. So thank you very much.
Thanks.